Hello, everyone, and welcome back to CraftCon 2025. I am super excited to welcome my friend Kevin McLaughlin, one of the most prolific writers I know, and one of the very few writers who can write a book a month for like a decade and still want to keep writing books a month. How are you doing today, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm pretty well. It's a good day so far.
Get into it. Do you want to tell everyone who you are and what's up with you? What maybe that what that awesome background is you have?
This uh, th- this is an AI image I made in the early days of Midjourney. I just really liked it, and it kind of stood out as being just cool looking. So I've used it as my Zoom background for a long time now.
Yeah, I think it's cool. It reminds me of like a colonization novel series.
Yeah, it looks a lot like what I see from like Tor or Orbit sometimes. Some of their better covers, and I
Yeah.
was like, oh well, that's cool. I want to hang on to that as a wallpaper.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you before I ask this next question is I was worried that when I came to you to do this, you would not have an answer because you are so prolific. You seem to like be unblockable in all these reasons. So I am super excited to hear your answer to this question, which is what's the biggest block you faced? It doesn't have to be necessarily the biggest, but what's one that just stopped you cold and you didn't think you would get through or didn't know how to get through it?
So I had to think about this a lot because I threw some stuff at you about it, and I've actually thought about it a lot. And for me, the big block was not it was not one specific thing, but it was a confluence of events. Sometimes when life goes, it's like, well, here's one, and here's another, well, and here's the third, and it
Hmm.
just piles on. And in my case, it was that I had worked with a traditional publisher for a number of years, done some great work with them, some terrific books, but they were work for hire books, and that means that I can't continue promoting those. Once the publisher stopped putting money into them, then I wasn't making as much from them.
Hmm.
So I shifted gears back toward being more indie. Now I'm sort of doing both again still, but producing more books that I can control so that I can maintain a workflow. And immediately afterwards, I got very ill, like the kind of ill where you're laying in bed for uh, 4 months, not sure what's wrong. The doctors fixed it. It got better, but those two things together merged into something I'm still digging myself out of today. Like a year, shoot, it's actually 2 years this month that I was finally in recovery mode from the illness. So I'm still in the process of getting myself fully back on track right now.
Yeah, that's actually very relatable to me because I've dealt with my own health issues and such, and
Mhm.
it it those things. I mean, 2025 is one of these things for me where like it just keeps piling on and piling on and piling on, and you're like, okay, but seriously, stop now. I'm good, but like I'm not this good to deal with all of these things.
I hear you.
So. How did you find yourself getting like what processes in place? How did you find yourself getting overcoming this block? And I know you said you're kind of in the process of it, but like at least like what has been your process so far?
So uh ultimately the combination created was a huge gap in new work hitting the book stands, basically hitting bookshelves. And the only way to press forward with that for me was to start producing more good work. So that's been my focus pretty much for the last year at this point. I launched Accidental Necromancer on Patreon and Royal Road last November. That's been doing really well. That was picked up by Athon. So again, a long delay there, but Athon's a really good publisher, and I do want to keep a foot in both worlds.
Right.
I'll probably work with LMBPN again, etc. You know, uh, I think it's good to have both, but I needed to start producing more work of my own again too. So last spring, I was pushing out some more new works of mine. I launched a new series late last year or two, and it's mostly just a lot of hard work
Yeah.
pushing through, getting caught back up again to the point where I'm launching things reliably again.
And how long was that gap?
Well, the problem with the gap was that the I had a combination of my final works with LMBPN going out
Hmm.
in the summer of 2023. And that series actually didn't take off all that well. And so I think they knew we weren't going to do more than 3 books for it. It was just a trilogy, so it didn't perform as well. Uh, and then I had nothing else through them and nothing else from me for about a full year. And by the time I was starting to produce new books and launch them again, my royalties from the LMBPN works had trickled down to very little. So I've got this huge gap in my own works because I was doing just trad books for many years, coupled with almost a year break from producing new works of my own too. After I stopped doing that, it was just a perfect storm that led to over a year of nothing new with my name on it coming out. And by the time I had lost a lot of momentum on Amazon, and I had lost a lot of income as well. I was down to relying heavily on old series that I'd written. The only series that I could advertise still were stuff that I'd written before 2019, my older
Hmm.
books,
Right.
my which aren't as good too. So then, like as the traditional publisher royalties began decreasing over time, which they will, that's normal. I was left with only these older books, these decade old books that I could market, and that doesn't work very well. It's not a good way to do a last. It's not a good way to
Right.
build a lasting career.
Did
So
you re go through and like recover them and reformat them or
I
do
did.
anything?
I did a relaunch of one of my primary series last spring, and uh, mostly crickets, to be
Mm.
honest. It did not perform anywhere near as well as my previous relaunches had been. It was I tried to do a big 10th anniversary deal. It didn't work. And that was that was exactly my first thought when it was like, oh, I'll tide things over by doing a 10th anniversary relaunch. The fans will love it. I'll add a new short story to each book, and it'll be great. Crickets.
Mm.
It sold. I mean, I think I sold a couple $1,000s for each book on the re-release, but that's not enough to
Right.
keep. This is my primary income, so that's not enough to continue working. That was really the turning point for me where I realized I needed to double down on new content. I
Yeah.
needed to double down on getting some fresh stuff out there. So I signed Axel Necromancer over to Aethon. I continued working on a follow-on series in that universe, but I've also been pushing ahead on releasing some fresh new science fiction stuff, which is all literally in the process of starting to come out this month.
Yeah. It's so interesting to hear you say that because people who are not writers or people who have like are starting their career, they always are like, but you have books. So like there's money because there are books. So like you'll always be able to make money on the books. And it's not quite as simple as that, is it? It never is really that simple.
It's not that simple. It's even with a back catalog. So a chunk of my back catalog is owned by is owned by traditional publishers, several of them, and they those rights the rights on some of those books will revert eventually, but I can't do anything with those ones. They're not touchable. I'm making money off of them, but only when the publisher pushes them, only when the publisher advertises them. For my books, I was the ones I had left to market were the ones I wrote back in like 2012, 2013, 2014, 15, 16, 17. Um, those didn't represent my best work anymore. And they were they were also old, even with a relaunch. Like you said, it isn't always easy.
Right. Well, and
Um,
like people have read them. This is the thing that I think is so like interesting. It's like, but like there are a lot of readers who have not read that book. No matter how, even if you sell 1 billion copies, there's still 7 billion people in the world who like have not read that book. But like
right.
on the same time, it's like how many people are there who are looking currently who like have not read it or and want to be in that time that frame of mind and like tastes change over the course of 10 years. So it's not so simple as like, let's just put money into a series, right?
That's true. I
Yeah.
used to write very short back in the day.
Hmm.
I was very fond of novellas or short novels, so like 30 to 50,000 words was my norm, and that is not as popular these days. People are preferring, or it still works, but people prefer longer works. So that's another strike against some of those older books.
Yeah.
Um, I still love novellas; they're really cool.
I mean, I love novellas too. Like a bunch of the Godsworth Chronicles came through novellas, but like it's it's also I'm dealing with this right now. So because I have a series that is my favorite series of all time, and people are like because there are five point of view characters in each book, like people are like I'm confused. Like there's a subset of people are like I am confused by this all being first person. And so, like, just because you have a book, also, that's like your favorite series, the thing you love the most in the world. Often I find there's an inverse correlation there where it's like the things that I put the most care and love and nurturing into end up performing the not so best.
The good news is that all of these things are solvable.
Right.
And in my case, it's a matter of I'm going to make sure I have more control over my work in the future. Um, that's a good lesson learned. I need to be producing at least some content of my own, indie content every year.
Mm.
I'm gonna, my plan moving forward is to sell, something like a half or a third to one half of my content to a publisher, and then keep the other two thirds roughly or so for indie publishing.
Yeah.
That way, I've still got a foot in both worlds, but I have some works that are still coming out that I control every single year. I think that that's really important. And of course, advertising is not optional these
Right.
days for most authors. And getting back into the swing of doing that again is after doing nothing but trad for a bunch of years, has also been a relearning experience because ad systems are constantly in flux.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most interesting things that the conversations I've had with you is how you think about series and how you think about like having these long series that each deliver results for you every month. Um, this is tangentially about your biggest block and like how you would coach someone through it. But could you talk through a little bit about how you think about making these series so you can make the income that you want every month?
Sure. When I come up with an idea in the first place, I usually try to aim for ideas that have some sort of scope to them. I'm really looking for at least six novels worth of content. 12 would be better. And the reason why, if I was going for novellas, I'd probably want 12 at a minimum, and 24 would be better. You know what I mean? Um, First off, I watch a lot of TV. I love good television series, especially the ones that have multiple seasons. I love seeing more adventures about the same characters. And the ones I really love best are the ones that have individual arcs for each episode, but also have an overarching arc for the entire season or whatever. I like to have the threads continue from episode to episode as they move forward. I love the old Stargate shows. Like I love The Expanse. More
Mm.
recently, I watch a lot of science fiction television, and I watch a lot of fantasy television too. But these things help inform my process as well. The way that a TV series works is very similar to the way a novella series works, and a novel series is not that much different. You just kind of add more in one episode, in each episode.
Mm.
It's more like a series of movies, I guess, than a series of than a TV show.
Yeah, well, you said something really interesting to me once. You were like, because I don't particularly like long series. They're not they actually like turn me off to an author often. And you said, well, you don't ma like what you want doesn't matter. Like what matters is who's going to buy the books at the end of the day. And like the people want long series because they
Mhm.
want to find something they love and stay in it as long as possible, right?
They do, absolutely agree. But not everyone. There's also an audience that really loves standalone books, and
Mm.
they really love standalone books. And then they'll happily read one standalone after another from the same author because they love that author's voice. They're just looking for a different experience and there's room for that too. But my audience is the people like me.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
long series. I burned my way through a couple of those. Jeff Cheney science fiction novel series. He, co-authors with a bunch of outstanding authors, and I will read one after another,
Okay.
working my way through the series because they're great books, and I love following the ongoing adventures of the characters that I care about.
Yeah, my audience is my wife who loves long series and not like also it's just easier to market long series, right? Because every book becomes like another like all you have to do is get someone in the front and by the time they keep adding more money at the end of it, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have talked to some people who do marketing with standalones, but their
Mm,
focus on for marketing standalones is on their email lists, not on
mhm.
advertising the individual books. So they'll have like a single book that they use as a reader magnet. It's a full novel usually, and they'll just run Facebook ads to that and collect new names for like 25 cents a name. They'll rack up tens of that. You've done this before yourself. They'll rack up tens of thousands of signups, and instead of advertising each individual book, they're working to get themselves a six-figure email list.
Right.
100,000 plus people who are all fans, all love their books, and like who if they can get 10% of those people to buy each new standalone, then they're in great shape.
Right.
But for me, yeah, I actually prefer the ad targeting book one approach. And if the ad is targeting book one, then there's 11 more books after book one. It's really hard to not have a profitable ad.
Yeah.
It makes running ads super easy because the read through from book one to book two and book three, all the way down to book 12 or whatever. Uh, Anything over six books, it's hard to lose money on ads. Even a bad ad will usually at least break even.
Yeah.
I aim for two times income on my ads, and I usually turn off any ad that's not making at least twice what I'm spending on it.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to make money on less than four books in a series and hard to lose money on more than like I'm gonna say eight books in a series. I'm not quite as confident as you, but like there's like a so whenever I do coaching, I'm like, okay, but how many books are in your series? Like two? Well, you there's no expectation for you to make money to like break even on this series. And if it's like a nine, it's like, okay, there's a problem. There's a big problem here that we have to like solve. But like if you're in that mushy ground between like four and six or seven books, it's like
Hmm.
hard to know if it's a you problem or just a time needs to happen problem. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, but this is about breaking blocks, and like I do think all of that stuff is relevant because it's all part of this, like how you would coach someone through it, right? And so, like
absolutely.
if you were to coach someone through like this had a similar problem to you, like they had some success, they are now stalled, they have been stalled for a while, they need to like get things back in motion. Maybe they're not even sure how to get unstalled. How would you do that?
Identify your strengths and then lean into them is what I would say. Everyone's got different strengths. For me, I love writing series and I write them well. So, like I can, if I wanted to do, say, I could do like a 25,000 word novella every week and just do that for 3 months and release one of them every single week, all the time for 3 months. This is a great idea. I should probably do this sometime. But if I did that, that would be leaning into my strengths. All I have to do is throw a bunch of ads at book one around the same time as book three comes out, put them all out there for 2.99 a pop, and they will sell. Like whether you have a good cover, good blurb, good writing, and enough advertising power thrown at them, they will sell. So I have the confidence in my writing at this point to know that I write well enough that people will enjoy the books and want to read them. I
Mhm.
just have to get the content out there. I have to lean into my strengths to in what I choose in what how I choose to spend that time.
Yeah, I love that. Mine is a little bit different because it's like, okay, I launched a book. I don't necessarily want to launch another book, but like I could launch a pen line. I could launch like a sticker collection. I could launch like pins. I could like take the assets of I do a lot of comics. So like I could take the assets of my comics and turn it into like other formats. And like this
Hmm.
is the great like some people are like, I have a great community that I can fall back on to like pick up coaching clients or to like help me make sweaters. I don't know what the thing is that your community can do. Like some people are even more ad focused than you are. And you're like, well, I just have to take whatever the audience loves now, I'm gonna write that book, and whatever the audience loves in a week, I'm gonna write that book, and then I can do that.
Mm.
And like where the strength, where your strength is, tends to be where your momentum is built too, right?
Yeah, 15 years ago, I came up with a concept around an answer, the answer, I think, for what should I write, which is one of the first things that everybody asks. And that's, like if you have a big circle over here with all of the things that you want to write, and a big circle over here with all of the things that people would love to read, large numbers of people would love to read, where those two circles overlap, write that.
Right.
Because I really feel like if you're not doing this, if you're not writing something that you love, you're going to end up burned out. Almost
Mm.
always. I've seen it so many times. Now, there's exceptions, obviously, but for most people, if you're writing books that you have no passion for and don't care about in the slightest, most people will eventually burn out. But if you're writing something that nobody likes to read, then that's not going to help you either. But where that overlap is, that's the best spot to aim for, I think,
That's
at
such a
least
great,
most of the time.
yeah, that's such a great point because often we're like, I just want freedom from my job to be a writer. And like, I don't care what I'm writing. But then, like, eventually, suddenly you get trapped in what is ostensibly a worse job than having a job, which is to have no guarantee of income, to have no guarantee of like any benefits, to have no income that's coming in consistently every month, to be working longer hours doing all that stuff. And also, you don't the thing that you used to have joy in, which was the writing. You could at least come home and have joy in the writing. Suddenly you're like, well, I don't even have that anymore.
Time to make the donuts.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your idea of like making sure you're like going back to the first principles of like what are you really good at? Like what like just as little momentum as needs as you can get, that little momentum builds and builds and builds and builds over time. Last question is, if you could go back and avoid this problem, what kind of things would you be looking for so you never have if you to never have this problem in the first place?
I would be very cautious about entering work for hire agreements in the future.
Hmm.
They were great. Again, don't get me wrong. I loved working with the publisher. They were amazing. The good trad pub, good deals. But work for hire agreements mean that those rights are not coming back to me, at least not anytime soon. And I uh, would rather not do as many of them at the same time. Like I said, in the future, I'm going to be splitting the work with more of it under my control as an indie and some of it, going to traditional publishers. So mixing it up some instead of being all eggs in one basket. Or that was really what bit me on that one. As far as the health, there's nothing you can do about that. That's going to happen. But again, had I been spending the last few years producing half of the works myself so that I had works that I could still control and market, the illness wouldn't have hit me anywhere near as hard. I would have had that soft landing of having several years of still producing a few books a year or 6 books a year of my own, in addition to the trad work.
Hmm.
And then I would have landed more safely. Uh, it was the combination of both. Because I was one of those writers that you're talking about, writing a book a month. Now they were books I liked. I loved the concepts. I was writing stories that I wanted to write, but because I didn't have the long-term control over any of those works, I was doing 12 books a year, making solid money. But as soon as I stopped writing 12 books a year, that money dried up.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the safe landing of having my own indie works to fall back on, except for the early stuff, and we already talked about the problems with that.
Yeah, in one of my books, I talk about platform assets audience, and it's like it doesn't matter if you have a great audience, doesn't matter if you have an amazing platform, if you have no assets to sell them or fall back on, then then you have a lesser safety net than maybe you would want.
Right.
Um,
So I had
yeah,
some wonderful early assets, and then a big gap here where the assets are the rights are all held by traditional publishers, and then like I'm trying to rebuild on the other side of this, basically.
right, right, right. Yeah, and I mean what I love about what you're talking about too is this idea that like you can be fluid because Prior to 2020, there was a lot of like, you were a trad person, you were a traditional person. There was very little overlap in those things. Like people, at least at the beginning of their career, they were like, I want to go trad or I want to go indie. And let's be frank, indie was like not like a sexy option back then. It was just like, well, you either get a trad deal or like you self-publish, which was not true, but like that was the general perception. So to be able to say like at this point, I'm kind of the other side because I had all self-published stuff really, and then I started doing publisher work. And like publisher work is great. Like once you have an entire catalog and you can say, I don't want to do that job, and it like doesn't negatively affect you, or you can be picky, pick and choose. You don't have to, back in the pulp days, you would have like the contract you had to write because like the job, like this was the work that was coming in. And if you didn't take this work, your family didn't eat, right? And be able to have that balance seems like a good thing.
I think it's definitely a good thing, and I think that there's deep advantages to both sides of the industry. And I've been working in the last couple of years to deepen my understanding of the trad industry simply because I it's there's a lot of readers out there who do not read from Amazon
Right.
and or Kobo or Apple.
Mhm.
They go to Barnes and Noble or they go to their local bookstore. Like Matt Dinneman is an amazing success story right now, in part because of those hardcovers. They're in every bookstore in the country practically.
Right.
His books are amazing. He's well earned that, but like that's a real heads up. That should be a real heads up to all indie authors about the other opportunities that are out there.
Mm.
We if we can bridge those worlds, then we can reap the benefits of both sides.
I love that. Any other final notes? That was a great final note to end on, but any final thing you would want to say to someone who's blocked right now?
I would just reiterate what I said before. I think about leaning into your strengths because we're all different. Like, if the I just said, well, I could write 25,000 word novellas once a week for like a few months, and somebody watching this, I'm sure was just like, oh my God, no.
Yeah, it
But
was
we
me. It
all
was
have,
me. I was
yeah,
like,
yeah. But we all have different strengths, and you should lean into whichever ones you have, because yours are going to be different from mine, and that's okay. We all have them though. You have to figure out what yours are and then lean into those. That's what I would say.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kevin.
No problem at all.